Hi, welcome back to Successful Learning Strategies. This is part 2 in our module. We're going to talk about Bloom's taxonomy. There are 6 different levels of learning that Bloom diagrammed for us. They start at remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and then creating. Remembering and understanding are the 2 base levels. In order to move anywhere up on this pyramid or circle, according to Bloom, you need to start with remembering. Remembering just means retrieving information, pulling information out of your brain and being able to put it either verbally or on a piece of paper. How can you study to help you remember? This is some of your really simple study strategies, such as flashcards or practicing formulas for your math or your science classes. The next level up is understand. So this means you're able to know and being able to explain what facts mean. You can study to better understand by explaining vocabulary words. So not just defining them like you would with flashcards, but explaining what they mean, summarizing chapters or units, and explaining how to use those formulas in your math and science classes. Apply and analyze are next. So apply is about knowing how to apply facts or rules to whatever it is you're learning. How to study in order to better know that you can apply your knowledge is solving problems or formulas, really writing out your work in math classes, for example. You can also create diagrams to show how to solve a problem. So if you're taking a humanities classes such as psychology or political science or history, break down how you got from point A all the way through to wherever you're talking about now. Next is analyze. So this means breaking down concepts or information into smaller parts. This can be complicated, especially if you don't understand it thoroughly. So how do you study to know that you can analyze at this level of knowledge? Well, you can review a case study, right? There's a lot of these in textbooks, and sometimes your questions in your readings for your humanities classes are there. Describe what happened in those case studies and why you think that happened. You can also reread your notes or your class reading, break it into smaller components, and explain how each part works with the other parts of whatever it is you're learning. The final 2 are evaluate and create. So evaluate means assessing the information you're given. And you can do this, you can study for this by making a sketch of how information could be understood differently. So if you're reading an article, for example, or listening to a YouTube creator, or even reading a video game review, talk about the different ways that that information could be understood based on different people's perspectives. You can also create an elevator speech. Condense all of your knowledge into 60 seconds. Time yourself. What do you know? What do you not know about that topic? You can evaluate your own knowledge, and then you start to evaluate what you know about the topic and evaluate the topic in and of itself. The last level, according to Bloom, is create. This is when you're combining parts to make something new. And so this can really, it's create, right? So it can be really creative. You can create a mind map of a topic or a chapter, really branch out, figure out how each piece plays a role within your main topic. You can also build a practice exam. By creating your own questions, you're combining and evaluating and applying all of your knowledge. You're trying to retrieve, you're trying to do all of those things we've already talked about in the different levels of Bloom's knowledge. So Bloom's taxonomy, right? We just did a very quick overview. You can always Google it. There's pyramids and there's circles and there's all sorts of diagrams like steps and stairs, things like that. Bloom really believed that you had to build on the learning levels. So you had to start with remember and build up. And the only way you got to create, for example, is by doing everything else. I don't necessarily think that that's how learning always happens, right? The second bullet is learning might not happen in that order, and that's totally okay. We can jump around the taxonomy. This just provides us a framework to understand how each of us learns at a different level depending on the subject and how deeply we understand something. Learning is cyclical. Just because you've gotten to that top stage that Bloom calls create doesn't mean that you stop learning. Usually when you get to that create stage, you start to have more in-depth questions, and then you get to go on a brand new journey about learning new things within that same topic. Bloom really wanted to start at the memorized knowledge, right? And to move to create. You don't always need to do that. But what I will say is that many of our K through 12 students who are mainstream through the K through 12 system relied heavily on memorizing information in the high school system. What we're doing here at the college level is moving you to be able to create your own knowledge. And so starting at memorizing, that might be very comfortable for you. Doing flashcards could be very comfortable. Memorizing formulas, something you had to do in high school. But now that we're at an upper level of learning, you're going to have to become more comfortable with some of those uncomfortable ways of learning. All right, so what's next? We've gone through this little lecture on Bloom's taxonomy. We've learned a little bit about how you might have to expand the way you learn. I'm going to ask you to write a reflection question in Blackboard. It's an assignment. I want you to think about a class you're in right now. Which of Bloom's levels of knowledge does your teacher test you on? All right, I'll see you in a little bit after you've answered that question.